Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Visit drjoelwade.com, scroll down, and click the Audible banner to get 2 free audiobooks and start your free Audible trial today.
You are now listening to the Mastering Happiness podcast with Dr. Joel Wade.
Our orientation to time and memory can have a huge impact on our happiness and well-being. Let's explore this a bit. I'm Joel Wade, and welcome to today's podcast. Phil Zimbardo, Professor Emeritus of Stanford University and author of the book The Time Cure, and famous also for the Stanford Prison Experiment, a classic study on our susceptibility to abuse power, describes 6 different time orientations. Past positive, where you're happy about the past events of your life, focusing on the positive. Past negative, where you regret, dwell on, and exaggerate the painful events of your past. Present hedonism, where you enjoy and seek pleasure in the present. Present fatalism, where you're passive about the present, feeling that events are not in your control. Goal-oriented future, where you make plans and seek to actively accomplish things to better your life. And transcendental future, where you seek to be good in this life, hoping to be rewarded after death. Our happiness is dependent to a large degree on our relationship to these 6 different time orientations. You can take the Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory to see where you line up with this at his website, thetimeparadox.com. A high level of past negative and present fatalism will lead to the worst experience. So the more you ruminate on past negative events and feel helpless and passive about the present, the worse you'll feel about your life in general. As Zimbardo says, these people are living in a negative past and think nothing they do can change it. This is the orientation that is common with severe depression and trauma. It's the opposite to an active, problem-solving approach to life. The good news is we can change this orientation, and doing so can have a tremendous positive effect on those symptoms. Our relationship to our past has a huge effect on our experience of life and our expectations of the future. It's also a high leverage point for changing our experience, because while the past has already happened and the objective events can't be changed, it's what we choose to focus on in our past and the meaning we make of it that affects us the most, often more than the actual events themselves. The truth is, our memory of the actual events of the past as they unfolded objectively is extremely unreliable. Rather, we remember very selectively, according to habit and expectation, and we tend to imbue those events with meanings or interpretations that may or may not have been accurate to begin with. I knew someone years ago who had a memory that he went back to over and over and over. His father was dying, and as a young boy, my friend had come into the room, at which point his father said, "Get him out of here!" My friend took this to mean that his father hated him and didn't want to see him. I can understand how that could be his interpretation, especially as a frightened and confused young boy. But was that really what his father was intending? Or did he maybe mean to protect his son from seeing something awful? Or might he have wanted his son to remember him in another way? Perhaps his anger was directed toward the adults who allowed his son to come in. We don't have any way of knowing, of course, and neither did my friend. Yet as an adult, he held on to and dwelt on the worst possible interpretation of that event, and in many ways that interpretation came to define part of his self-concept. But the truth is, it was his interpretation of the event more than the event itself which was hurting him. We know this because when people change their painful interpretation of such things, their experience also changes, and they generally feel happier, stronger, and more resilient than they did when they were holding on to the negative meaning. This is not to deny anything we may have suffered through in the past, but to appreciate how our interpretation can lead to deeper and prolonged suffering or to something more hopeful and expansive. Let's take a closer look at memory, because understanding what memory is and is not can do wonders for our relationships, our self-awareness, and our peace of mind. Then we'll come back a bit to Zimbardo's different time orientations. Sitting around the table at a family gathering, another family member might recount a memory of an event from your childhood, talking about what you experienced as though it's a fact. How do you feel when they do this? Probably at least a little annoyed. He, after all, did not have your memory. He had his memory. You were both there in the same place at the same time, but you were having your experience of the event, and he was having his. The two experiences could be worlds apart. We've all had those arguments where one of us remembers things one way and the other remembers it differently. Remember a few years ago when we were at the lake and you fell in with all your clothes on? I didn't fall in. You pushed me in. Did not. Did so. And the battle ensues to determine whose story is true, who wins the battle for the most accurate memory. Can you ever remember one of those arguments ending well? Such debates are fueled by a mistake. The idea that our memories are an accurate recording of facts, like a biological video camera with unlimited storage capacity. The question usually turns into who has a good memory and who has a bad memory. It's a win-lose discussion, and these never turn out so well, even with the best of intentions. The truth is, it's likely that neither is accurate. Memories are less like a factual data recorder and more like stories we've created of our personal experience, an amalgam of emotions, perspective, and interpretations of events. We remember the meaning we made of events at the time. Over time, our memories change, adapting to our changing sense of self and our different perspectives, and in the process, that meaning can change as well. In the backyard of my childhood home, we had what we called the forest. My memory was of a deep wooded area with massive trees. But that memory was formed when I was little. Visiting that yard as a young adult, I was surprised to find that it was really just a few relatively smallish trees in an area not much bigger than the size of your average garage, hardly the dense wilderness of my childhood recollection. Our memories can even be totally bogus. Elizabeth Loftus of the University of Michigan has done extensive research into how malleable our story memories can be. In one of her more famous studies, a number of people recalled that on a shopping trip at the age of about 5 years old, they got lost for an extended period, cried, received aid and comfort from an elderly woman, and finally were reunited with their family. The fascinating thing about this is, none of it ever happened. The story was completely made up by the researchers. Relatives had been asked to write a short paragraph of 3 actual events from the person's childhood, and then this 4th phony story was included in the mix. After reading these 4 stories, as told by their relatives, these folks were asked if they remembered them or not. 1/4 of the participants claimed that they remembered the made-up one, even though it never happened. Loftus's work has been a pivotal blessing in bringing to our awareness the danger of false memories that can be encouraged by overzealous therapists or in the courtroom by manipulative legal teams. It reminds us that our memories are stories that contain facts, but they are not reliably factual. This doesn't mean that there's no reality. It's just that our memories are malleable, and we don't have to dig our heels in so hard when there's a difference in what we remember. Memories are a powerful force in our lives. They weave into stories, they give us meaning and continuity, they allow us to carry a sense of ourselves over time, and they connect us with the people and events that have influenced and shaped us. In ancient Greek mythology, Mnemosyne was the goddess of memory, inventor of speech and writing, and the mother of the 9 muses who brought inspiration to poets, musicians, playwrights, dancers, even astronomers. Without memory, there can be no creativity, for there can be no story to draw from, no inspiration to create. But the fluid quality of our story memories can also be a blessing in another way. When we hold on to past painful memories as precisely true, they can imprison us in the pain of a moment and bind us to that pain for a lifetime. I have had clients who have spent decades ruminating over very specific painful memories, feeling the same pain each time they think of it, holding the memories tightly in the foreground of their experience. There's no good that comes from this kind of reliving of awful memories. We don't have to deny anything in order to allow past hurts to take their proper place in history. Over time, it's healthy to allow life's hurts and disappointments to fade, but we can speed this process along by looking to other stories we remember that remind us of people who loved us, challenges we overcame, and opportunities we can feel grateful for. By actively searching for the good people, events, and opportunities of our past, we color the overall tone of our memories, and we can allow their natural fluidity to heal the old wounds, like a tree will grow its bark around an old injury. There's also a deeper level of memory, the implicit memories. These are involved in the less conscious and more automatic things we do. If you want a deeper understanding of how our different kinds of memory work in a very clear and useful way, Peter Levine in his book Trauma and Memory does a brilliant job of this. Implicit memory is what allows us to remember how to ride a bike or play a sport. Our bodies remember the movements, the focus, and the feeling of the actions, and we're able to dive right into it again. Have you ever had a feeling that you recognize someone without remembering the story, just sort of a gut or body sense? I don't have a story memory of visiting my grandparents in Santa Barbara. I was very little when they lived there. But when we drove through the neighborhood where they lived recently, I could feel that I had been there before. Those are implicit memories. No story, no clear images, but a body emotional sense. In the case of my grandparents, they were good people, and it was a good, safe, joyful feeling that I had. I felt like going toward it. We can also have experiences that were hurtful or scary, and then the feeling would be to move away from that place, even if we don't know what it is we're trying to get away from consciously. Our implicit memories are like this, very deep, very primitive, really. It's the basis of our gut feelings to go towards or away from something or someone. Understanding the fluid quality of our story memories can help us to grow and strengthen ourselves from some of our painful, rigidly held stories toward more expansive, hopeful ones. Paying attention to the subtler and deeper flow of our implicit memories can help us be more in tune to enjoy a flourishing sense of connection, or to trust our gut to avoid potential danger. So, the prescription for a negatively experienced past is twofold. Search for the positive experiences that you haven't appreciated, and seek to reframe the negative ones, looking at them through different perspectives, seeking a broader understanding of what likely was a relatively narrow and protective view of specific events. How we deal with our past is particularly important because there's so much we can do with it. But our relation to the present and future are important too. Let's get back to Zimbardo's time orientations. We want to avoid what he calls present fatalism. The thought that there's nothing we can do about events now is a helpless stance. So, present fatalism is a recipe for depression and anxiety. Though we don't want to have our total focus in life on momentary pleasures, there's a future to think of too, you know. A degree of pleasure and enjoyment in the present is very important. The present is where we live, after all. It's where we enjoy the company of family and friends, the beauty of a sunrise, the delight of a moment, the absorption of total focus, or the thrill of a triumph. Taking effective action in the present toward our goals and values into the future is essential for this. I've done another podcast on the importance of focusing primarily on what we can control, even if it's only a little bit, and accepting and not dwelling on what we can't control. If you want to master how you orient to your present and future, master this. Regarding the future, it's important to have goals that we aim for. Making plans for the future we can look forward to and work towards keeps us in an active, purposeful stance toward life. And that active, purposeful stance is what propels us forward, creating movement, direction, and meaning. And this stance is powerfully enhanced by aiming for what we can do and letting go of what we can't do. A positive relationship with our past and an active, engaged relationship with our present and future are what make for a happier life. Search for the positive treasures of the past. Savor the love, challenges, and joy in the present. And plan well for and take effective action towards the future. These are the keys to time well spent and a life well lived. Today's show is brought to you by Audible. If you haven't heard of Audible, let me tell you about it. Audible is a subscription service that gives you access to thousands of amazing audiobooks from all over the world. If you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably familiar with the amazing positive benefits that audio programs can provide. There's no better platform than Audible when it comes to discovering new and exciting audiobooks to enjoy. Now, exclusively for my listeners, you can start your absolutely free 30-day trial and receive 2 free audiobooks just for trying out Audible. If you don't like it, cancel before the 30 days is up at no cost to you. Visit drjoelwade.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and click on the Audible banner.